The morning mist hung thick over the small mountain village of Cedar Hollow. Sarah Martinez walked slowly down the dirt path that led to the old forest, her camera bag slung over her shoulder. She was a journalist from the city, sent here to write about local folklore and legends for a travel magazine. The assignment seemed simple enough. Collect some interesting stories about mountain superstitions and take beautiful photos of the wilderness. Sarah had arrived in Cedar Hollow 3 days ago and immediately noticed how the villagers acted strangely whenever she mentioned the forest. They would look away, change the subject, or make excuses to leave. Even the friendly innkeeper, Mrs. Chen, had warned her multiple times not to venture too deep into the woods alone. "There are things in those woods that shouldn't be disturbed," Mrs. Chen had said while serving Sarah breakfast that morning. Her weathered hands shook slightly as she poured coffee. "Old spirits don't like strangers." Sarah smiled politely but didn't take the warning seriously. She had grown up in the city and believed in facts, not ghost stories. Besides, she needed good photographs and interesting tales to make her article compelling. The forest looked perfectly normal to her. Tall pine trees, singing birds, and peaceful streams. What could possibly be dangerous about it? As she walked deeper into the woods, Sarah enjoyed the fresh mountain air and the way sunlight filtered through the tree branches. She stopped frequently to take photographs of interesting rock formations and wildflowers. The forest seemed alive with natural beauty, and she couldn't understand why the villagers were so afraid of it. After walking for about 2 hours, Sarah reached a small clearing where she decided to rest and eat lunch. She spread a blanket on the grass and pulled out sandwiches and water from her backpack. While eating, she noticed something unusual about the trees surrounding the clearing. Several large pine trees had deep scratches in their bark, as if something with very sharp claws had marked them. Sarah stood up to examine the markings more closely. The scratches were too high and too deep to be made by any normal animal she knew. They formed strange patterns that almost looked like symbols. She took several photographs of the markings, thinking they might add mystery to her article. As she was photographing the trees, Sarah heard footsteps approaching from behind. She turned around to see an elderly man emerging from the forest. He was tall and lean, with long grey hair and a beard. He wore simple hunting clothes and carried an old rifle across his back. His eyes were pale blue and seemed to look right through her. "You shouldn't be here," the man said in a calm but firm voice. His accent was local, but his words were clear and serious. "I'm sorry if I'm trespassing," Sarah replied politely. "I'm a journalist writing about the area. Are you a local hunter?" The man nodded slowly. "Been hunting these woods for 40 years. Name's Thomas Whitehawk, and you're the city girl staying at Chen's Inn." Sarah was surprised that he already knew about her. Word travels fast in small towns, I guess. "I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm here to write about local traditions and folklore." Thomas's expression grew darker. "Folklore." He repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "That what you call it?" "Well, yes. Stories passed down through generations. Legends and myths that make places interesting to visitors." Thomas walked closer to where Sarah stood near the marked trees. He examined the scratches she had been photographing, then looked at her with serious concern. "These ain't decorations, miss. They're warnings. Territory markers. Something lives in these woods that doesn't want to be found." Sarah felt a small chill run down her spine, but she tried to remain rational. What kind of animal makes marks like these? "No animal," Thomas said quietly. "Something else. Something that's been here longer than any of us." The way he spoke made Sarah uncomfortable. His voice carried absolute certainty, as if he had seen whatever made those marks with his own eyes. She decided to change the subject slightly. "The people in the village seem very superstitious about the forest. Have there been accidents here? Wild animal attacks?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tree markings. When he spoke again, his voice was even more serious. 3 months ago, a young woman went missing in these woods. Local girl named Emma Patterson. She was engaged to be married, happy as could be. Went for a walk one evening and never came home. Sarah's journalist instincts kicked in. This was exactly the kind of local story her magazine would want. "What happened to her? Did search teams find any trace?" "Oh, we found her," Thomas said grimly. "Found her hanging between 2 trees about a mile from here, but not the way you'd expect." "What do you mean?" Thomas looked directly into Sarah's eyes. "She wasn't dead when we found her. She was alive, but changed. Something had taken her mind, her spirit. She just hung there in the trees, eyes open but seeing nothing. Couldn't speak. Couldn't recognize her own family. Sarah felt her mouth go dry. That's horrible. Is she in a hospital now? Getting treatment? She's still hanging there? Thomas said calmly. The words hit Sarah like ice water. What? What do you mean she's still hanging there? Exactly what I said. She hangs between those two pine trees, day and night. Been 3 months now. Doesn't eat, doesn't drink, doesn't age. Just hangs there like a warning to anyone who might disturb what lives deeper in these woods. Sarah stared at Thomas, trying to process what he was telling her. It sounded completely impossible, like something from a horror movie. That can't be true. People would have rescued her. The police would have investigated. Police came from the county seat. Thomas nodded. Took one look at Emma and decided this was beyond their understanding. They marked it as an ongoing investigation and left. Haven't been back since. But her family tried to get her down the first week. Every time someone touched her, they got sick. Real sick. Emma's father spent 2 weeks in the hospital after trying to cut the vines that hold her up. Doctor couldn't explain what was wrong with him. Said his blood showed things they'd never seen before. Sarah's rational mind rebelled against the story. There has to be a logical explanation. Maybe she's in some kind of catatonic state. Or, you want to see her? Thomas interrupted. The question caught Sarah off guard. Part of her was curious, as any journalist would be. But another part of her felt deeply afraid of what Thomas was describing. You said anyone who touches her gets sick. I said anyone who touches her dies, Thomas corrected her. That's what I told you. Her father got lucky. He only touched her for a second before he realized something was wrong. Others haven't been so fortunate. Sarah felt her hands trembling slightly. Others? Emma's fiancé went to her 3 weeks after we found her. He couldn't accept that she was lost to whatever took her. Climbed up to where she hangs and held her for nearly an hour, talking to her, begging her to come back to him. What happened?
He died in her arms.
Just faded away, like his life was being drained out of him. When we found him the next morning, he looked like he'd aged 30 years. His hair had turned white and his skin was like paper. Doctors said his heart had simply stopped, but there wasn't any medical reason why. The forest around them seemed to grow quieter as Thomas spoke. Even the birds had stopped singing. Sarah realized she couldn't hear any normal forest sounds anymore. No insects buzzing, no small animals rustling in the underbrush, just silence. Why are you telling me this? Sarah asked quietly. Because you're planning to go deeper into these woods. I can tell. You've got that look city folks get when they think they know better than the people who've lived here their whole lives. Sarah couldn't deny that he was right. Despite his warnings, she was more curious than ever about what she might find deeper in the forest. The journalist in her wanted to investigate, to find rational explanations for these incredible stories. What exactly do you think is out there? She asked. Thomas shouldered his rifle and looked toward the deeper woods. Something old. Something that was here before the first settlers, before the native tribes, maybe before humans at all. It doesn't like to be disturbed, and it protects its territory in ways that don't make sense to folks like us. You've seen it? Glimpses. Shadows moving between trees when there's nothing to cast them. Eyes watching from places where no eyes should be. Sounds that don't come from any animal I've ever hunted. Sarah found herself believing him despite her rational mind telling her this was all nonsense. There was something about Thomas's calm certainty, the way he spoke about impossible things as simple facts, that made his words carry weight. The girl you mentioned, Emma, could you show me where she is? Thomas studied Sarah's face for a long moment. You won't listen to warnings, will you? Just like all the others who come here thinking they can solve mysteries that have been keeping this forest protected for generations, I'm just trying to understand. If something that extraordinary is really happening, people should know about it. Should they? Thomas asked. Should city folks come trampling through here with cameras and scientists, disturbing something that's been content to stay hidden as long as people leave it alone? Sarah hadn't considered that perspective. She had been thinking like a journalist, focused on the story and the truth. But Thomas was suggesting that some truths might be better left undisturbed. What if there's a way to help Emma? What if whatever happened to her could be reversed? You think no one's tried? Thomas's voice grew sad. Her mother begged the pastor to perform an exorcism, brought in doctors from the state university, even contacted people who study strange phenomena for the government. Nothing worked. Nothing even came close to working. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the trees. Sarah realized she had been in the forest much longer than planned. She needed to get back to the village before dark, but she also felt like she was just beginning to uncover something incredible. "Will you show me?" she asked again. "Just to see. I promise I won't touch her or disturb anything." Thomas was quiet for several minutes, clearly struggling with the decision. Finally, he spoke. "If I show you Emma, you'll understand that this isn't folklore or superstition. You'll see that there are things in this world that can't be explained or controlled. And once you see her, you'll never forget what she looks like hanging there. It will change how you see everything." "I understand." "Do you?" Because Emma was a lot like you when she first came to these woods. Curious, brave, certain she could handle whatever she found. Now she's been hanging between those trees for 3 months, and every day she becomes less human and more like whatever took her. The way Thomas described Emma made Sarah feel cold inside, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. "I need to see for myself." Thomas nodded slowly, as if he had expected her answer. "Then we go now before it gets dark. Whatever lives in these woods becomes more active after sunset." "And, miss?" "Yes. When you see Emma hanging there, don't look directly into her eyes for too long. Some folks who have done that say they can still feel her looking back at them even weeks later." Thomas turned and began walking deeper into the forest, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knew every tree and trail. Sarah followed close behind, her heart beating faster with each step. She had no idea that what she was about to see would change not only her understanding of the world, but her entire life. As they walked through the darkening woods, Sarah noticed that the temperature seemed to be dropping, even though the evening had been warm when they started. The shadows between the trees grew longer and darker, and she began to hear strange sounds in the distance. Not quite animal, not quite human, but something in between. Thomas moved forward steadily, never hesitating about which direction to take. He clearly knew exactly where he was going. After about 20 minutes of walking through increasingly dense forest, he stopped and held up his hand. "From here, we move very quietly," he whispered. "It doesn't like noise, and it especially doesn't like strangers." Sarah nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. Whatever rational explanations she had been holding on to were rapidly disappearing as the forest around them took on an otherworldly atmosphere. The air itself seemed thick and heavy, making it hard to breathe normally. They crept forward through the trees for another 10 minutes until Thomas stopped completely and pointed ahead through the darkness. "There," he whispered, "between those 2 pines. Do you see her?" Sarah strained her eyes to peer through the gloom. At first, she saw nothing but tree trunks and shadows. Then, gradually, she began to make out a pale shape suspended between 2 massive pine trees. As her eyes adjusted, the shape became clearer, and Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. A young woman hung motionless in the air between the trees, held up by thick vines that seemed to grow directly from her skin. She was dressed in the same clothes she had worn 3 months ago, a simple sundress that was now tattered and stained. Her long dark hair hung down around her face, and her arms and legs dangled limply at her sides. But what made Sarah's stomach lurch with horror was that the woman was clearly alive. Her chest rose and fell slowly with each breath. Her eyes were open, staring straight ahead with an expression of terrible emptiness. "Dear God," Sarah whispered. "Now you understand," Thomas said quietly. "Emma Patterson has been hanging there for 93 days. She doesn't eat, doesn't drink, doesn't sleep. Just hangs there like a fruit that will never ripen and never fall." Sarah stared at the impossible sight before her, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The vines that held Emma up seemed to pulse with their own life, like veins carrying blood through a body. They wrapped around her wrists and ankles, but instead of cutting off circulation, they seemed to be sustaining her somehow. "How is she still alive?" Sarah asked. "Whatever took her is keeping her alive, using her as a warning, or maybe as bait. We've never been sure which." As Sarah watched, Emma's head slowly turned toward them. Her empty eyes focused on Sarah's face, and a terrible smile spread across her lips. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the forest, even though she was 50 feet away. "Come closer," Emma said in a voice that sounded like wind through dead leaves. "Come see what I've become." Thomas grabbed Sarah's arm firmly and pulled her back behind a large tree trunk. His grip was strong, and his face showed real fear for the first time since she had met him. "Don't listen to her," he whispered urgently. "That's not Emma talking anymore. It's the thing that took her. It wants you to come closer." Sarah's heart pounded as she pressed herself against the rough bark of the tree. Emma's voice continued to drift through the forest, calling out in that strange, hollow tone. "I can smell your fear," Emma said, and now she sounded almost playful. "It's been so long since someone new came to visit me. The hunter brings people sometimes, but they never stay. They always run away." Thomas looked sharply at Sarah. "That's not true. I've never brought anyone here before you." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. If Emma wasn't talking about Thomas, then who was she referring to? And more importantly, how could she know that Sarah was afraid when they were hidden behind the tree? "She can sense us somehow," Sarah whispered. "It can sense us," Thomas corrected her. "Whatever's wearing Emma's body isn't human anymore. It's something else, something that feeds on human emotions and energy." Emma's laughter echoed through the trees, high and musical, but completely wrong. "The old hunter still thinks he understands what's happening here, but he knows so little about the truth." Thomas's jaw tightened. "We need to leave. Now." While it still focused on talking instead of hunting. But Sarah found herself unable to move. Despite her terror, she was fascinated by what she was witnessing. This was the story of a lifetime, something that would change how the world understood reality itself. She had to know more. "What does she mean about the truth?" Sarah asked quietly. "Nothing good," Thomas replied. "It likes to play games with people's minds, makes them think they can understand it or reason with it. That's how it caught Emma in the first place." Emma's voice came again, closer this time. "I can hear you whispering about me. Don't you want to know what really happened to me? Don't you want to know what lives in the deep places of this forest?" Against Thomas's protests, Sarah peered around the tree to look at Emma again. The young woman was no longer hanging limply between the trees. She was sitting upright, supported by the vines, and her head was turned directly toward their hiding spot. Her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, like an animal's eyes reflecting light. "I was curious too," Emma continued, and her voice sounded more human now, almost normal. "I came here looking for adventure, for something exciting to break up the monotony of small-town life. I found much more than I bargained for." Sarah felt Thomas tugging at her sleeve, trying to get her to retreat further into the forest. But Emma's words held her transfixed. This was exactly what she had come to the village to find. A real mystery, a genuine, unexplained phenomenon. "What did you find?" Sarah called out before Thomas could stop her. Emma's glowing eyes brightened, and her smile became wider. "I found the guardian of this place, the one who has been protecting these woods since before humans learned to make fire. It's beautiful and terrible and older than the mountains themselves." "Sarah, don't engage with it," Thomas hissed. "The more you talk to it, the stronger its connection to you becomes." But Sarah was beyond listening to warnings now. Her journalist instincts had taken over completely. "What does it look like? What does it want?" "It doesn't want anything from humans," Emma replied. "It simply exists. But when humans disturb its rest, when they venture too deep into its domain, it protects itself. It takes one person and transforms them into a guardian, a sentinel to warn others away. That's what happened to you." "I volunteered," Emma said, and for a moment her voice sounded genuinely happy. "When I saw what it truly was, I understood that some things are more important than human life. I chose to become its voice, its warning system." Thomas pulled Sarah more forcefully this time. "That's not what happened. I was part of the search team that found Emma. She was terrified and barely conscious when we got to her. Whatever took her didn't ask permission." Sarah looked back and forth between Thomas and the glowing figure hanging between the trees. One of them was lying, but she couldn't tell which. Emma seemed so calm and certain, while Thomas appeared genuinely frightened. "The old hunter doesn't understand," Emma said, apparently able to hear their whispered conversation. "He sees only the surface of things. He doesn't know about the agreement." "What agreement?" Sarah asked, ignoring Thomas's increasingly desperate attempts to make her stop talking. "The agreement between the Guardian and the people of this valley. For generations, the families here have known about it. They've protected its secret in exchange for its protection of their land. But sometimes outsiders come, people who don't understand the rules. People like me. People like you." Sarah felt a sudden rush of understanding. "The villagers know about this. They've always known." "Of course they know," Emma laughed. "Did you really think that entire town could live next to something like this without being aware of it? They've been feeding it information about visitors for decades. Thomas's face had gone pale. That's not the villagers wouldn't. Think about it, Hunter, Emma said, and now her voice carried a note of cruel amusement. How did you know to find the journalist today? How did you know she was going to venture deep into the forest? Sarah stared at Thomas, pieces of a terrible puzzle clicking together in her mind. Mrs. Chen. She told you I was asking about the forest. Thomas opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. His expression showed that Emma's words had struck home. The innkeeper is the current messenger, Emma confirmed. Every generation, one family takes responsibility for identifying threats and reporting them to the Guardian. Chen has been watching you since you arrived, Sarah. She knew you wouldn't be satisfied with surface stories. She knew you'd come looking for the real truth. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. So, this was all planned? You brought me here on purpose? Thomas looked genuinely conflicted. I brought you here to warn you away. I thought if you saw what happened to Emma, you'd leave and never come back. But the Guardian had other plans, Emma said. It's been watching you too, Sarah. It finds your mind. Interesting. Your curiosity, your determination to uncover secrets. These are qualities it values. The forest around them had grown completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped blowing. Sarah realized that the temperature had dropped significantly, and her breath was forming small clouds in the cold air. What does it want with me? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. It wants you to choose, Emma replied. The same choice it offered me. You can leave now, tonight, and never return to these woods. Go back to your city and your safe, rational world. Forget everything you've seen and heard. Or you can meet the Guardian yourself. See what it really is. Understand the true nature of this place. But if you make that choice, there's no going back. You'll become part of the forest forever, just like I did. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to process everything she had learned. The villagers were protecting some ancient entity in the woods. Thomas had brought her here not to warn her away, but because he was part of the system that fed newcomers to whatever lived in the deep forest. And now she was being offered the same terrible choice that Emma had faced. I need time to think, Sarah said. Emma's laughter was like glass breaking. Time is exactly what you don't have, dear. The Guardian doesn't like to be kept waiting. It has sensed your presence in its domain, and now it wants an answer. Thomas grabbed Sarah's hand. We're leaving, right now. Emma, tell your Guardian that Sarah has chosen to leave.
I can only tell it the truth, Emma replied.
And the truth is that Sarah wants to see it. I can feel her curiosity burning like a flame. She's not going to be satisfied with warnings and half-truths. Sarah realized that Emma was right. Despite her fear, despite the obvious danger, she desperately wanted to know what was really in the deep woods. The rational part of her mind screamed that she should run, should get as far away from this place as possible. But the larger part of her, the part that had made her become a journalist in the first place, needed to know the truth. What would happen if I met it? Sarah asked. Thomas squeezed her hand harder. Don't even think about it. Look at Emma. Look what it did to her. Is that what you want? Emma seems happy, Sarah pointed out. She said she volunteered. It's controlling her mind, Thomas insisted. Making her think she chose this. But I saw her when we first found her. She was screaming, begging us to help her. That thing took away her free will. The hunter remembers what he wants to remember, Emma said sadly. But I remember everything, including how I felt when I first saw the Guardian. It was the most beautiful and terrible sight I had ever witnessed. And yes, I was afraid at first, but once I understood what it was offering me, I knew I couldn't refuse. What was it offering you? Sarah asked. Truth. Real truth, not the limited understanding that humans usually settle for. It showed me how the world really works, how life and death and time and space are all connected. It opened my mind to possibilities I never could have imagined. Sarah felt drawn to Emma's words. This was exactly what she had always been searching for in her work. Absolute truth, perfect understanding of how things really worked. But the cost, Thomas said desperately. Look at the cost. You're not human anymore, Emma. You're trapped here, hanging between those trees forever. I'm not trapped, Emma replied gently. I'm exactly where I choose to be, and I'm not hanging here forever. This is just one phase of my existence. Soon I'll transform further, become something even more wonderful. Sarah noticed that the vines holding Emma up seemed to be moving more actively now. pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. As she watched, small flowers began to bloom along the vines, glowing softly in the darkness. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "Don't look at the flowers," Thomas warned. "They're part of how it controls minds. The patterns of light, the way they move, they hypnotize people." But Sarah couldn't look away. The flowers were indeed beautiful, unlike anything she had ever seen before. They seemed to pulse in time with her own heartbeat, creating patterns that were almost musical in their complexity. "Sarah," Emma called softly, "would you like to see the Guardian now? It's very close. It's been waiting just beyond those trees, listening to our conversation." Sarah's head snapped up from the hypnotic flowers. "It's here? It's always here," Emma smiled. "This entire forest is part of it, in a way. The trees, the animals, the very soil. Everything is connected to its consciousness. But its physical form is magnificent. Would you like to see?" Thomas stepped in front of Sarah, blocking her view of Emma and the glowing flowers. "Enough. We're leaving right now." "You can't make that choice for her," Emma said, and there was steel in her voice now. "The Guardian has offered Sarah a gift that very few humans ever receive. The chance to transcend normal human limitations and become something greater." "By hanging her between trees like a scarecrow?" Thomas shot back. "By incorporating her consciousness into something vast and eternal," Emma corrected. "I will not hang here much longer. Soon the vines will take me deeper into the forest, deeper underground, where I will become part of the root system that connects all life in this region. I will know everything that happens for hundreds of miles in any direction. I will understand the thoughts of every animal, the dreams of every tree." Sarah found herself genuinely intrigued by Emma's description. It sounded like a form of immortality, a way to become part of something much larger than individual human existence. "What about your family?" Sarah asked. "Your friends? Don't you miss your old life?" "I can still sense them," Emma replied. "I know when they visit my grandmother's grave, I feel their sadness when they think of me. But I also understand now that their grief is based on limited perspective. They think death is an ending, but it's really just a transformation. What I've become is so much more than what I was." Thomas looked at Sarah with pleading eyes. "Please, don't listen to it. I've seen what this thing does to people. Emma isn't the first person it's taken. There have been others over the years, people who came here looking for answers or adventure. They all end up the same way." "How many others?" Sarah asked. "Too many," Thomas said grimly. "The Guardian takes someone new every few years when it needs to renew its warning system. As the previous person transforms and moves deeper underground, it selects a replacement." Emma nodded approvingly. "The hunter is finally telling some truth. Yes, there have been others, and each one chose their fate freely once they understood what was being offered." "They were manipulated," Thomas insisted. "Just like you're being manipulated right now, Sarah. This thing finds people who are curious and intelligent, then plays on their desire for knowledge until they make a choice they can't take back." Sarah looked back and forth between Thomas and Emma, trying to decide who to believe. Both versions of the story had elements that rang true, but they painted completely different pictures of what was happening here. "I want to see it," Sarah said suddenly. "I want to see the Guardian for myself and make my own decision." Thomas's face went white. "Sarah, no. Once you see it, there's no going back. It will be in your mind forever." "Good," Emma said, clapping her hands together with delight. The sound echoed strangely through the forest. "The Guardian will be so pleased. It's been hoping for someone like you for a long time." As Emma spoke, the forest around them began to change. The trees seemed to grow taller and closer together, creating a natural cathedral of living wood. Soft phosphorescent light began to emanate from the moss and fungi on the tree trunks, providing an otherworldly illumination. "It's coming," Emma whispered, her voice filled with reverence and excitement. "Can you feel it approaching?" Sarah could indeed feel something. A presence in the forest that seemed to dwarf everything else, ancient and powerful and completely alien. Her rational mind screamed warnings, but her curiosity burned even brighter than her fear. The Guardian was coming to meet her, and Sarah Martinez was about to discover that some truths were more terrible and wonderful than she had ever imagined possible. The forest floor began to vibrate beneath Sarah's feet, as if something massive was moving through the earth below. The phosphorescent glow from the moss and fungi grew brighter, creating patterns of light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Thomas grabbed her arm one last time, his face desperate with fear. Sarah, please. We can still leave. We can still get out of here before it fully manifests. But Sarah found herself unable to move away from the clearing. Whatever was approaching filled her with a mixture of terror and fascination unlike anything she had ever experienced. This was the story she had been searching for her entire career. Not just a story, but the story. The discovery that would change everything humanity thought it knew about the world. The trees around the clearing began to bend inward, their branches weaving together to form a living dome overhead. Between the interlaced branches, Sarah could see stars appearing, even though it was still early evening. But these weren't normal stars. They pulsed and moved, forming constellations that shifted and changed as she watched. The Guardian controls space and time in its domain, Emma explained, her voice filled with wonder. What you're seeing is the forest as it truly exists, not bound by the linear time and fixed space that humans usually perceive. A low, harmonic sound began to resonate through the forest. It wasn't quite music and wasn't quite voice, but something that seemed to speak directly to Sarah's consciousness. She could feel the sound vibrating in her bones, in her blood, in the very core of her being. Thomas released her arm and stepped back, his hand moving to the rifle on his back. It's too late now. It's here. The trees at the far edge of the clearing began to part, moving aside like curtains being drawn back. What emerged from between them defied Sarah's ability to comprehend fully. The Guardian was enormous, but somehow didn't seem to take up physical space in any normal way. It appeared to be made of living wood and flowing water and swirling mist, but also of starlight and shadow and things that had no earthly equivalent. Sarah's eyes couldn't focus on any single part of it for long. When she tried to look at what might have been its face, she saw patterns of bark and moss that seemed to contain infinite depth. When she looked at what might have been its hands, she saw branches that ended in flowing streams of silver light. The creature was beautiful and terrible in equal measure, ancient beyond human comprehension, yet somehow alive with vital energy. Welcome, Seeker. The Guardian spoke without words, its voice resonating directly in Sarah's mind. I have watched you since you first entered my domain. Your curiosity burns bright, brighter than most who come here. Sarah tried to speak, but found her voice caught in her throat. The presence of the Guardian was overwhelming, filling her awareness completely. She felt like a small child trying to understand something infinitely larger than herself. Don't be afraid, the Guardian continued, and she could feel warmth and kindness in its mental voice. I simply wish to offer you a choice, as I offered your predecessor. Emma smiled from her position between the trees. Isn't it magnificent, Sarah? Can you see why I couldn't refuse what it was offering? Sarah managed to find her voice. What exactly are you offering me? Knowledge, the Guardian replied, understanding of the true nature of existence. Your species lives such brief, limited lives, seeing only the smallest fraction of what reality contains. But I can show you everything, past, present, and future. The connections between all living things, the patterns that govern the universe itself. Thomas stepped forward despite his obvious fear, and in exchange she becomes your prisoner. Just like Emma. The Guardian's attention shifted to Thomas, and Sarah felt a wave of something that wasn't quite displeasure, but wasn't approval either. The hunter speaks from ignorance. Emma is not my prisoner, she is my partner, my voice in the world of humans. Soon she will join with the root network that spans this entire continent, and her consciousness will expand to encompass more than any human has ever experienced. But she won't be human anymore, Thomas insisted. No, the Guardian agreed calmly. She will be something much greater, as could Sarah, if she chooses. Sarah looked at Emma hanging between the trees, trying to understand what she was really seeing. Emma's face was peaceful, even blissful. The vines that held her seemed to pulse with life and energy. Small flowers continued to bloom along their length, creating a crown of living beauty around Emma's head. What would happen to me? Sarah asked. Specifically, initially you would hang here as Emma does, the Guardian explained. But this is only the first stage of transformation. As the vines integrate with your nervous system, your consciousness will begin to expand. You will feel the thoughts of every creature in this forest. You will sense the flow of nutrients through the soil, the conversations of trees through their root networks, the dreams of hibernating bears. The description was both terrifying and enticing. Sarah had always felt limited by human perception, frustrated by how little any one person could truly know about the world. What the Guardian was describing sounded like the ultimate form of knowledge. And after that, she pressed. After that, your physical form will be transformed into something more suitable for your expanded consciousness. You will become part of the living network that connects all life in this region. Your awareness will span hundreds of miles. You will know everything that happens in your domain instantly. You will live for centuries, perhaps millennia. Sarah felt her heart racing. The offer was incredible. The kind of transformation that mystics and philosophers had dreamed about for thousands of years. But the cost, I would never see my family again, she said quietly. You would sense them whenever they came near your domain, the Guardian replied. And more than that, you would understand them in ways you never could as a human. You would feel their emotions, know their thoughts, see the patterns of their lives stretching forward in time. That's not the same as being with them. No, the Guardian admitted. It is far more intimate and complete than human relationships ever could be. Thomas moved closer to Sarah. Don't listen to it. It's offering you everything while telling you that you have to give up everything that makes you who you are. I am offering her the chance to become who she truly is, the Guardian corrected. Sarah Martinez has always felt constrained by human limitations. She has spent her life seeking truth and understanding, frustrated by how little any single human can know or experience. I am offering her unlimited knowledge and eternal existence. Sarah realized that the Guardian was right about her frustrations. She had always felt limited by being just one person with one perspective and one short lifetime to understand the vast complexity of existence. The opportunity to transcend those limitations was incredibly appealing. What about my work? She asked. My writing? The stories I wanted to tell? You would tell the greatest story of all, Emma said from between the trees. You would become the story. Every person who enters this forest would learn from you, would be changed by encountering you. You would touch thousands of lives in ways no human journalist ever could. Sarah looked around the transformed clearing, at the impossible beauty of the Guardian's domain. The stars above continued to move in their hypnotic patterns. The phosphorescent light from the moss created an atmosphere of otherworldly magic. Everything about this place spoke to something deep inside her that had always yearned for mystery and wonder. How long do I have to decide? She asked. The choice must be made now, the Guardian replied. My domain exists outside normal time, but your human consciousness cannot sustain this level of revelation for very long. Soon you must either join with me completely or return to your limited existence. Sarah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This was potentially the most important choice any human being had ever faced. To accept meant gaining unlimited knowledge and experience, but losing everything that currently defined her identity. To refuse meant returning to her normal life, but with the knowledge that she had turned down something incredible. Thomas stepped closer to her. Sarah, think about what you'll be giving up. Your friends, your career, your freedom to choose your own path. This thing is asking you to become its slave. I am asking her to become my equal, the Guardian corrected. Once the transformation is complete, we will share consciousness. Her thoughts will be my thoughts. My knowledge will be her knowledge. We will be partners in maintaining the balance of this domain. What balance? Sarah asked. The balance between the human world and the natural world. The Guardian explained. For millennia, I have protected this forest from those who would destroy it. But as human civilization grows more powerful and more destructive, I need allies who understand both worlds. Emma has been invaluable in this role, but soon she will move to a different phase of existence. I need someone to take her place. Sarah began to understand the larger picture. The Guardian wasn't just offering her personal transformation, it was recruiting her for a cosmic purpose. She would become a protector of one of the last truly wild places on Earth.
The environment is being destroyed everywhere, Sarah said, thinking out loud.
Climate change, deforestation, pollution. If I could help protect even one place from that destruction, you could do much more than protect this one forest, the Guardian said, sensing her thoughts. As your consciousness expands, you will learn to influence human thoughts and behaviors across a much wider area. You could guide policymakers, inspire scientists, influence public opinion. You could help save not just this forest, but forests around the world. The scope of what the Guardian was describing took Sarah's breath away. She could potentially become a force for healing the entire planet's ecosystem. After years of writing articles that she hoped might make small differences, She was being offered the chance to make a difference on a scale she had never imagined. But you'd be giving up your humanity, Thomas said desperately. You'd become something else entirely. Is saving the forest worth losing your soul? I would not lose my soul, Sarah said slowly, working through her thoughts. I would expand it. I would become more than human, not less. Emma nodded approvingly from between the trees. That's exactly how I felt when I made my choice. I knew I was gaining something infinitely precious. Sarah walked closer to where Emma hung suspended by the living vines. Up close, she could see that Emma's skin had taken on a slightly greenish tint, and her hair seemed to have small leaves growing in it. But her eyes were bright and alert, more alive than any human eyes Sarah had ever seen. Do you regret it? Sarah asked quietly. Even for a moment? Never, Emma replied with absolute certainty. How could I regret becoming part of something eternal and beautiful? How could I regret gaining the ability to touch every life in this forest, to guide and protect creatures that have no other voice in your human world? Sarah felt the truth in Emma's words. This wasn't madness or brainwashing. This was genuine transformation into something greater than human. The rational part of her mind that had always guided her life was telling her to run, to return to safety and normalcy. But the deeper part of her, the part that had always yearned for meaning and transcendence, was singing with excitement. If I agree, Sarah said to the guardian, what happens next? You will hang here beside Emma while the vines integrate with your nervous system, the guardian explained. The process takes several weeks and is not painful. During that time, your consciousness will gradually expand. You will begin to sense the thoughts and feelings of the forest around you. Emma will guide you through the transition. And Thomas? The guardian's attention turned to the old hunter. Thomas has served as a guide for those who seek the truth about this place. He has brought many people here over the years, though few have chosen as wisely as Emma, and potentially as Sarah. Sarah stared at Thomas in shock.
You've done this before?
You've brought other people here to be taken by this thing? Thomas's face was filled with anguish. I've brought people here to give them a choice. The same choice you're facing now. Some leave and never return. Others, like Emma, choose to become something greater. How many others? Over the past 20 years, maybe a dozen people. All of them were like you, curious, intelligent, searching for something more than ordinary life could offer. Sarah felt betrayed, but also strangely impressed. Thomas hadn't been trying to warn her away from the guardian. He had been evaluating whether she was worthy of the choice she was now facing. Why me? She asked. Your mind, the guardian answered. I can sense the patterns of human thought, and yours is exceptional. You have the intellectual capacity to handle the expansion of consciousness that comes with transformation. Most humans would be driven mad by the experience, but you are strong enough to maintain your sense of self even as you become something more. The compliment was both flattering and terrifying. Sarah realized that she was being offered this choice not randomly, but because the guardian had been studying her and had determined that she was uniquely qualified for transformation. I need to know one more thing, Sarah said. If I choose this, if I become what Emma has become, will I still remember who I was? Will I remember my life as Sarah Martinez? You will remember everything, the guardian assured her. But you will also understand those memories in new ways. Your human life will seem like the first chapter of a much longer story. You will see how every experience, every choice, every relationship was leading you toward this moment. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to envision her future. She could return to the city, write her article about local folklore, and continue her career as a journalist. She would have a normal lifespan, normal human relationships, normal human limitations. She would die in perhaps 50 years, having made a small impact on a small corner of the world. Or she could choose transformation. She could become part of something vast and eternal, gaining the power to protect and guide not just this forest, but potentially ecosystems around the world. She could live for centuries or millennia. Her consciousness expanded beyond anything humans had ever experienced. When she opened her eyes, her decision was clear. I choose transformation, Sarah said quietly. Emma let out a cry of joy from between the trees. The guardian's presence seemed to warm with approval. Even Thomas, despite his obvious sadness, nodded as if he had expected her choice. Are you certain? The guardian asked. Once you begin the process, there is no returning to human form. I'm certain. Sarah replied, surprised by how calm she felt. I've spent my whole life looking for the truth behind the stories. Now I have the chance to become part of the greatest story of all. The guardian moved closer to Sarah, and she felt its presence surrounding her like warm water. Then let us begin. Vines began to emerge from the ground around Sarah's feet. They moved slowly and gently, wrapping around her ankles and wrists with surprising delicacy. She felt a slight tingling sensation where they touched her skin, but no pain. As the vines lifted her slowly into the air, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was making the right choice. She could feel it in every cell of her body, every neuron in her brain. This was what she had been meant for all along. Thomas stood below her as she rose between two massive pine trees, taking his place as the guardian's messenger for the next seeker who would come to the forest. Emma smiled at her from the neighboring trees, no longer alone in her transformation. "Welcome, sister," Emma said softly. "Welcome to eternity." As the vines settled into their final position, holding Sarah suspended between earth and sky, she felt the first stirrings of her expanding consciousness. She could sense the heartbeat of every tree in the forest, feel the dreams of sleeping animals, hear the whispered conversations of the wind through the leaves. The guardian's presence filled her mind like gentle sunlight. "Rest now, Sarah Martinez. When you wake, you will begin to understand what you have become." Sarah closed her eyes and surrendered to the transformation that would make her more than human. In the forest below, Thomas began his long walk back to the village, carrying the knowledge that another seeker had found her destiny among the trees. And deep in the earth beneath the forest, ancient roots stirred with new life, welcoming another consciousness into the vast network that connected all living things. The Guardian had gained a new partner in its eternal work of protecting the wild places of the world. Sarah Martinez, the journalist, had ended her human story. But Sarah Martinez, the forest guardian, was just beginning an adventure that would span centuries and touch thousands of lives. She had found the ultimate truth she had always been seeking, that some mysteries were meant to be joined, not just observed. In choosing to hang between the trees, she had chosen to become part of something infinitely larger than herself. And as the vines continued their gentle work of transformation, Sarah understood that she had made the most important